with a good draft here going into game number 2.
Yeah, and with the Genji being such a focal point on Tomb of the Spider Queen, we are very concerned as to where Soul Torturers and L5 are going to be going for this next game. So I am ready to get into it and figure out, is the Genji first pick going to be worth it on whatever battleground we move into?
It's a matter of what you want to go into. And speaking of what we're going to get into, Dreadnought.
I mean,
I don't know what to say.
We've seen this so many times in HGC Korea. You stomp a team in the first game and you go to Sky Temple. This is the go-to for L5, Tempest, and MV Black, and also Miracle. And so it's no surprise here. And as you were saying, Dread, they figured out how to deal with that second phase, win the Giants, time that out, kill the healing fountain oftentimes, try to parlay that into a boss. L5 is so strong on this map.
But the thing is, we can talk about the fact that it's post-first temple phase, and I think it's about 1 minute 50 seconds after that, you're going to be getting the timer, things start to come in roughly 2 minutes after that when you get to the next temple phase. So it's like, what do you do in that window? But if you actually watch this game, and depending on the composition, L5, you try and do one thing, they're like, well, guess what? We can do something better here, and we're actually going to do something with it after the first temple phase, and that's how we're going to take control. And it always sneaks up on you, but their strategy on this one is some of the absolute best. Now, they've taken a step back. They've got the new roster, but I was saying this earlier, they have signs to where it seems like they're coming back to that old form.
I feel like, I wonder if Soul Torturers has a plan against the Genji, if they are willing to give it up to L5, because in the past they've shown Varian play against Zeratul, they've shown Varian against Genji, try to lock that down, maybe try to draft towards that, hide it from L5, and then bring it in as a surprise, because it's something that Soul Torturers has highly prioritized in the past when they were, getting used to having Scroll off the ETC as the new meta came in with a new Brock and Varian. He was experimenting a little bit, but it seemed to be the go-to against Zeratul, against Genji. So maybe L5 has somehow missed that in their research, maybe try to allow them to do something like a high mobility hero like the Genji, like a Zeratul, and then kind of lock it down with a Varian surprise pick like that. It's tough when you're theory crafting things like maybe they should draft a Varian, like then we're getting like really theory crafty, but just ideas.
I feel like we find ourselves in a bit of a conundrum, if you're a Soul Torturers fan right now, because we're going to Sky, where because L5 was the chooser of the map, they were the ones who selected it, we know the Soul Torturers is going to be first pick. We talked about the Genji being first pick, but this is a map where Genji first pick makes sense. Macro is not nearly as important as it is. The rotations is Genji's great at. The skirmishing, Genji is great at. So do they still pick it up, because we know they have to be second-guessing themselves after that first game?
The way I look at this here is that Genji on Sky Temple versus Genji on Tomb of the Spider Queen, it gives Genji much better flanking positions. It allows him more room to work. But you start to run into the fact of Vala with her level 1 talent, getting that mobility. And then another hero that SC likes to play, who will run rampant on this battleground, especially if you're second pick, and you can more comfortably go into a Tassadar pick, is the potential Tracer.
Yeah, this is something that we could definitely see. The high mobility that Tracer has, especially if they draft it late, the Torture soul laner. That's what SC likes to play Tracer into, is that strong soul laner to punish when he's pushing the top lane, come in there, get the ganks with the pulse bomb, something that we absolutely could see. It is going to be the Abathur first pick here, so Soul Torturers look like they probably want to grab the Genji. This feels like okay, ban Aria, we'll take the Genji sort of draft here. See what L5 is going to do if they decide to remove it, or if they just allow the Genji as they did in game number 1.
It's rather interesting as well, considering that though this is it's a kind of an inverse situation when looking at the Ariel and the Genji. Genji thrives now a lot more, and it's not to say that Ariel double support can't be successful on a map like Sky, but those levels 1 through 9 pressure, it's not nearly as dominant. So it is kind of like, well, does L5 get too much respect to it and stick to what is kind of the meta of the tournament so far by banning it out? And it looks like they're going to, it's a coin toss for them too.
See, well, the Uther to me says that you're willing to give up the Genji, but you don't want to give up the Uther Genji. And that shows to me that you're potentially going in to the Ariel Vala, maybe the Tas Vala, or some iteration of that. And that's the biggest thing to me, is that Uther ban says that you're not going to be picking Uther, but this is an interesting pickup to take the Ariel for yourself.
I actually really like this, because now L5 can't counter the Uther and the Genji. It's going to be Illidan Genji, there's so hyper mobility here. And with what we've seen from Soul Torturers in their drafts in Taiwan, this is where they like to play Varian. Now, I don't think they're going to grab it here. I think they have to hide it until later to surprise L5 with the pick. But something to consider as we move into the last rotation for them.
So now that we have the Ariel on that side and such offense from L5, do we expect like a Brightwing or some form of a secondary support to try and deal with this pressure? I guess
the Trinity! It's been a while.
Oh, man.
Hit me with it. Hit me with it. Don't, you know.
We're talking about Illidan and Genji coming out here, and you kind of... This is where I'm talking about L5. And you could talk about team fighting all you want right now, but this is the exact moment to where, you know, Wolf and I talked about Zhang and Rich playing the Illidan, playing that split soak here. You've got Genji that can early flank. Now, when you go into the Holy Trinity, you really give up a little bit of wave clear early game. You give up some of those early game weird advantages. You could run into that, and you could just three-man push with this, but the way that L5 plays, they will happily trade into things like this earlier and play around it in the first, play around it after the second, or around the beginning and after the first temple phase, and I feel that L5, through their first ban and through their first picks, have won the draft and conceivably won the game.
Potentially. Now, let's look at what L5 is considering here. The Arthas pick means I'm more concerned about team fighting with the Illidan and the Genji, but the ban on Dahaka means I want to split push really hard. When you're looking for that push in the bot lane with the Trinity, as you said, when you're looking for that wave clear push to try to pressure those turrets, I want to have the split push on top with the Illidan. They're going to allow Soul Torturers to potentially grab the Dahaka here with this Arthas pick. So you can see what they're prioritizing. They are more concerned about winning the longer fights, which are normally going to be taking place later on in that bottom temple phase, as you said, Dread.
And one of the kind of awkward moments about the Dahaka and all the focal points that we have into this draft is we know the Korean perspective on Illidan into Dahaka is very much in favor of the Illidan. And the only thing that I can think of to be able to convert that back if they wanted it is the Abathur hat constantly onto that Dahaka to enable them. So suddenly that first ban we see from Soul Torturers seems to kind of be biting them back here.
I wish I had like an hour we could just sit down and talk about this, is that if you use that three-man to run bottom lane and you're thinking, yes, we're getting great early game value, the minute that first temple phase ends, what reason do you have to send that tri-man down there? And that is where L5 will be like, here's the Siege Giants that Dread talked about leading into this battleground. Here's the Siege Giants, here's our push, and now we've got this empowered push. The Rhaegar pickup is 100% guaranteed. This is L5 in a nutshell. This is their draft. They will run the Rhaegar when all other things are off the table. They'll go back into the Anubarak. L5 is getting exactly what they wanted.
The question is, what's going to be the fifth pick? I mean, you could argue for the Tyrael pick, but it feels like you've really given up too much range damage if you end up going down that path. So let's see what they end up picking at the end of the day. I think it's going to be kind of a counter to what Soul Torturers grabs as their warrior. We talked about the Variant, something they played so much throughout HGC Taiwan, but I don't know if they're really willing to do it now. It was something they did at the beginning because Skrull wasn't that familiar with the new meta heroes after ETC fell off. But still, something they've consistently shown against Illidan, against the Genji, so definitely something they're considering right now.
You've got to have some type of deterrent here because Dahaka is fine, but he's not necessarily that peel tank. I mean, you've got to look at things. Murden or Stitches at this point, and you're getting two different things, right? So you can get the Putrid Bile going, or you can get the slow on the auto attacks. But the minute Anubarak dives in and you've got this...
ETC!
That is... the riskiest, but probably the best option.
It's old school Skrull, man. I mean, he carried with the ETC, and BlizzCon actually helped defeat North America with the global ETC, the stage dive. Now, again, I don't think that's what we're going to see here, especially considering they have the Dahaka, but they have these options, and it's a comfort pick for Skrull going into this this potentially last game of the best of three.
And with so many melees on the side of L5, they have to have the fear of the mosh pit. I'm going to go ahead and just assume that this, in fact, is a mosh pit, and bring back the first question that I kind of presented over to you guys. With the Ariel, and knowing that you were going to move into such a hard initiation CC composition, did you need the secondary cleanse? Now with the ETC picked up, you got to really be questioning, is Tassadar the right slot there for Soul Torturers?
What good, I mean, when Illidan presses R with Hunt, what does it say above his head?
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. What happens when he hits somebody?
They get stunned, and here's the Li Ming follow-up for L5.
There's your backup option of like, hey, we better have a wave of force. But
I mean, the Li Ming is a little bit rarer in Korea right now, but it's an old favorite for SDE. He's so famous for getting the Li Ming resets. It was the hero he made a name for himself on in 2016, back on Mighty. Different roster, different time period, but that was when Li Ming was super meta. And even after the changes, the nerfs that she's experienced, the meta changes, this is a great hero because of the Wave of Force you mentioned, and again, a comfort pick for SDE.
Listen, ETC's flaws are really evident. He suffers against poke, but how do you engage when you have a Volatas Ariel behind you? You can't dive in. You don't have somebody diving in with you, so now you succumb to the potential poke, and they just turn that around. It's it's counter punch versus counter punch, and your ETC is going to have a hard time going up against this comp.
And we did see out of some of the European teams, oh, hold on a minute, we're going to get into the game. I'll bring it up a little bit later here, but in the red on Sky Temple in game number 2 is going to be your Taiwanese representatives being Soul Torturers, already down 1 game, looking to fight back here with that, rock-heavy ETC.
And their opponents up a game 1-0 in the series. It is L5. SC on the Genji as expected. Swoi doing that Rhaegar Wolf dance here as SDE is on the Li Ming. And remember, we talk about these two players, SDE and Hooligan. It's their first international event. The crowd is cheering against them. They're playing against a Taiwanese team. For the first time, they play against a live audience outside of Korea. And they get 2 comfort picks with Hooligan on the Diablo. Now, SDE, because of the ETC pick, gets to play that Li Ming. So at least they have this comfortable hero they can play on, and already Hooligan showed he can carry with the Diablo, and I feel like SDE is looking to show the same here as we go into game number 2.
And I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to what I was trying to talk about of what we experienced at the Western Clash when looking at ETC with another warrior into a double support composition. Traditionally, it was abusing the fact that, the new ETC passive and cycling out some of the spells to get that, but then relying on the Ariel plus another support to kind of keep everybody alive while ETC was willing to peel into those melees. Then you always had the threat of that mosh pit. But there's one glaring difference from this composition to every other, and again, it goes back to the Tassadar versus any other support. Not just the cleanse, but I want to highlight that peeling and those long fights that were so successful when Europe busted it out. They had more effective health. Tassadar is just a shield. It doesn't last permanently. The peel in the long fight doesn't help him at all. If anything, he wants those fights to be more effective, more fast, so he always gets value on those shields, Wolf.
Yeah, and I mean, remember ETC, he gets with the, the new version of his trait. I say new, but it's the most recent version of his trait. He gets the armor, which isn't going to affect what Li Ming is tossing at him. If he wants to aggressively position himself to try to knock out the melee of Illidan, the pseudo-melee of the Genji when Dragon Blades are flying, then he is going to be faced with long-distance orbs, especially once we get to the later stage of the game, 13-16, the extra damage coming out from Li Ming with the Mirror Ball. These are things that ETC is terrified of, and Tassadar's protection, sure, can help the ETC, but where's the protection going to be for God Dog when that goes down? So you really have to consider where ETC stands, and the mosh pit with Li Ming available already might be not the right option, so it might be a situation where we see if Soul Torturers gets 10 first, they hold on to it, they wait, they see the wave of force, a game of chicken with heroics, so we're a ways away from that now, but things to consider as we move forward.
Yeah, and I feel like these comps really just, or at least that of Soul Torturers, only accents a common problem that we see throughout all of competitive Heroes of the Storm from all parts of the world, and that is just when you draft your composition, you have to, wow, beautiful detainment strike from Zola to punish SC. He's burnt all of his mobility.
Yeah.
God Dog's got the kill. That is a brush dock on in, and 005 getting first blood over L5.
Not entirely sure what that rotation was for SC. Perhaps just thought it was going to be a solo camp, but definitely was not. Just kind of the blind jump in there. Using his mobility to check faster meant that he didn't have the escape there. But perhaps this was just a minor distraction, as again, as we saw on Tomb of the Spider Queen, every time Soul Torturers got the pick, it was L5 that was getting the macro rotation, getting the structure, getting the objective. So sure, win for Soul Torturers in the short term, but now the camp is gone. It's not a factor anymore, and this is already a free fort for L5.
So structurally, L5 already finds themselves pulling ahead over Soul Torturers. So that means that we always focus on 2 things on a map like Sky. It's how good are your structures and where does your experience sit? Soul Torturers is not far enough ahead quite yet for them to really be able to have write home about how big their advantage is. What I would like to see from them that they may be able to do is rather than risking a pre-10 fight, because let's be real here, a Li-Ming, Illidan, and Nubarak pre-10, and Genji, everybody is just amazing on the side of L5. Abuse that double support tri-lane we've been talking about so much, and worry about mid-fort front wall, top fort front wall, and not necessarily always bringing the fight to L5 here, because they are going to need themselves that mosh pit or stage dive, whatever it is, if they want to stand a chance in the fight.
I feel like with the Siege Giants here, this could be their moment to try to push the bot lane in, to get that wall down, to maybe, just possibly, if they can, get the healing fountain down before that bottom temple phase with the composition they have. They are going to use this. I feel like it's a really good Giant timing. They took already the blue side Giants. They're taking their own now. This allows them this push. This is a very small window of time they have to potentially knock down this well, but with the orb coming in, destroying those Giants, it's not going to happen. And again, it's Jungha who's getting that value in the top lane with the Illidan. And as you said, EXP is a big factor, but when you talk about objectives and you talk about structures, it's really just an extension of the core health on this map, and that's a huge lead for L5.
Yeah, Jungha and SE are not afraid of this, initiation here into the 2 versus 2. Cucumber's already birthed a dimensional shift, so that is now a reset available for SE. Gonna go ahead and use that to get out of the grasp of 005. Friend or foe coming in, and L5 winning up on top. Question is, are they going to win down here on bottom?
Doesn't look like it. SDE is just chucking his abilities in here as Hooligan tries to buy time. Wants to use that left side brush to get away. Might have to swing around the right side here. Swoy does rotate in, actually, and Hooligan looks to try to escape. Slide actually does miss. Looks like it's going to be the pick regardless, but it's a 1-for-1.
Oh my. Hooligan throwing out that impale before he goes down, and then ends up being the final blow onto Zola. Swoy using that Feral Lunge right on in, and this is now L5 doing what they do best, skirmish.
Okay, SDE, can he get out of here? Has the extra Calamity damage, was looking for those resets with the dominance here to get the health back. Unfortunately, unsuccessful. Regardless, this is going to be a win for L5. The will of the 10. It's Wave of Force locked in first. So the big question now is, does Scroll still commit to that stage dive, as Jungha has already killed the keep wall? And remember, as I said before, the forts, the walls, they're just an extension of the core health. Now, L5 gets more damage done to structures here. Soul Torturers need to get 10. They need to try to win a fight to get back into this, but it just feels like we're seeing consistently the shutdowns from L5.
With the rarity of ETC as a pick, if this goes into stage dive, I have a lot to argue on when and when not to, or like why you may move into this direction. So he's still going to hold it here as Scroll. He moves in. Power Slide not going to be selected quite yet.
Okay, selects it now, but he is knocked into that cocoon, so not going to be able to use it. SC survives, but 005, he's the secret agent, tries to come in, but the Ancestral is good. He held onto it to the last moment until he absolutely needed it. And it will go off here, so L5 gets the win. They just need to step on this temple for 1 second to get the final shots. Looks like they might give it to Soul Torturers, though.
But it's costing them a bit here with Jungha still being a nuisance up onto the top lane. It's going to cost a bit of damage onto the keep, but possibly the well. That's the biggest thing, is if you remove places to back out, tap, and reinitiate, suddenly your entire opponent loses a lot of time because they have to retreat all the way to the Hall of Storms. And with no Mule in here, unlike some of the other games we've seen on Sky Temple, nobody's too concerned, specifically L5, about ridding that. The Hunt's going to go on to Zola, forcing the Aegis.
Okay, they did miss the combo with Li-Ming here too, but here comes the Dragon Blade. Mosh Pit hits too, but it's just not going to be enough. Immediately interrupted here. Protection coming in here with the deflection. SC gets taken out. Can they turn this fight?
This is 4 versus 5. The Hawk has not been into this fight whatsoever, and that Mosh Pit was immediately interrupted. God Dog moved up there with the vault, forcing Hooligan to use himself the cocoon, and on the side, Swoy getting caught out by 005. He is got to be the sneakiest Dahaka I have ever seen, constantly just getting picks, one-offs everywhere on the map.
I guess it was 007 was Bond, 006 was Trevelyan, and 005 was Bowie, man. And here we go. They're going to go ahead and take a less secret boss here as L5. With the picks there, they just can't deny this. There's nothing they can do. And unfortunately, Jungha's kind of all but done what he can accomplish in the top lane. He's not going to kill a keep in a moment like this. Sure, he can get some extra experience in the top lane right now, but this is a moment where Soul Torturers gets a lot of value. And after they take this Siege Giant cap, I'd like them to take the Vala, Ariel, Tastar, and try to push a little bit more aggressively here with this. If they just walk away, the boss gets less value than it could have potentially gotten for free there.
Just one of those situations where it's trying to dictate the pace of the game and making sure that you don't give your opponent too much. And this is, a common theme all over the world, but catching out Hooligan there, the members of Soul Torturers, and now they get that siege up that you were talking about. They want to find themselves opening up the map, but they are still down essentially 2 entire forts. They're even in experience, but structurally, they are still very much behind.
And that's a comeback mechanic in Heroes of the Storm too. There's a lot of EXP to be had on these two forts that are available. It's a comeback mechanic, the comeback EXP as it's often called. So that could allow them to actually take a talent tier lead eventually in this game. Perhaps they misjudged the boss there, thought they could get double fort, and that's why they rotated mid, but they got the pick regardless, and now they're poised to take their first really strong, potentially a temple and a half phase here to get the advantage.
Oh, man. I want to say what L5 just did there was so beautiful. So they send Genji to capture on bottom while everybody goes to the top half of the map and secure that knowing that Dahaka's there, which, by the way, they're currently getting a lot of pressure onto 005. He hasn't popped the adaptation yet. The hunt's going to go down. Adaptation was used.
Oh, man, just so much CC here. He does get the heals from that adaptation. Will he be able to get the burrow out? There's nowhere to interrupt, but the cocoon is going to be the way. Nicely done, and Hooligan already the star here in his first international event, making so many big plays. That's going to be the pick here for sure now, finally onto 005. And they can, of course, make this, at worst case, a trade. They're going to have the night camp on this already damaged keep. L5 in a great position.
But what I wanted to highlight was how clever their rotations were. Because of what they did on bottom, they were able to make that happen on top. Swoi stayed in range for the highest mobility hero, Genji, to start on top of it and find out where they were. He never moved out and showed himself. He was not willing to risk anything. So suddenly, Soul Torturers didn't know where all the members of L5 were. The flank on Zhangha was beautiful. And then suddenly, a winning trade and rotation everywhere on the map. This is L5 and the pressure that we expect from a Korean team.
Well, speaking of pressure, they may have stuck around too long here. Zhangha used the hunt early, but doesn't actually have any way of escape. Does finally get to this wall, which is left alive with his split pushing earlier. For situations like this, we're going to see the big dive in for Hooligan, but there was nothing else, no follow-up there. No extra Ancestral to protect him. The rest of the team was not on the same page there. And now will look to be a great start because of the rotation you mentioned, the extra check from Genji, the potential top lane keep that comes after it is all just taken away from them in a flash when they overextend. Now Soul Torturers is likely to get more than they could have ever wanted here with this temple phase.
Yeah, they'll find themselves not even when it comes to structures, but pretty darn close. After these shots up on top, wail away at that keep front wall, go ahead and break down the base a little bit of L5. They'll find themselves, I mean, willing to at least trade shrines from this point out, which, I mean, is absolutely astounding to be able to say that structurally they have themselves that mid fort still available and that the keep isn't being threatened. L5, you know, is going to need more than just one clever rotation if they are going to be successful, but the adaptation, no burrow used there, not seeing Swoi coming in from the flank. 005, he's sneaky snake, but, you know, sometimes he can get caught out.
I suppose he thought he was going to get the tongue grab there based on the way that exchange went, but he certainly did not hit it there. So 16 now goes to L5, but this is a much closer game than the last game. This is not snowballed one way or the other. Could change very quickly, though, here if Cucumber gets caught. Does get away here with the dimensional shift.
But it cost him an Archon.
Definitely did. And Zhangha will get away here yet again with the wall. If he keeps using these walls to get away, he's not going to have very many walls left at the end of all of this. But Soul Torturers hold strong here. They still have that mid fort. That's one extra buffer they have, which kind of makes it almost dead even in structures if you kind of add 2.5 keeps plus the half fort. But
caster math, boys. We're go ahead do the math here. Scroll goes with the power slide. Still patient there with the mosh pit. Rush Dot coming in from 005. Drag's going to connect. Beautiful cleanse. Swoi making sure Hooligan's just fine there. And you said it before, though. This is the youth of Hooligan as a player and how impressive his performance has been so far, and I completely agree. Frontliners are probably supports and warriors, I would argue. I know everybody at home is going to cringe a little bit at this. The hardest to learn at an international level because if you mess up once, everyone knows very, very quickly. And you even see that with Hooligan here in this game specifically. So I just feel like for him to come out and be making these big plays and rarely messing up is, you know, kind of shows the growth that he's made as a player.
And look at this hyper-aggressive play from Zhangha. Now they force the Dahaka back. He could hunt back in at any moment, in fact, so that's why Soul Torturers can't really posture here. So not only do they lose the keep, they lose the fight here, and they lose control of this zone, nearly losing that mid fort. And so now, catapult pressure is mounting. This is not the snowball L5 was looking for with this map pick, not even close, but you see Zhangha does get the split push down, and now Soul Torturers, until they can equalize this keep pressure, they're a ways away from that, are going to be fighting behind.
Yeah, and now it's going to be a lot of the kind of dance of watch Illidan with the Night Camp up on top into the 1v1 with the Haka. The minute that Soul Torturers commit any resources up into there, it's just L5 gets to choose. Do we want to trade or do we want to get the upper hand into the global? For now, it looks like they're comfortable with SC getting the shots on bottom. Illidan probably most likely is going to make the rotation down, maybe feign capturing those for a couple of seconds, because otherwise we find ourselves to where Soul Torture is obviously now falling behind after losing that top keep, but it's more damage than I would like to see L5 get up, knowing that they have so much pressure onto that top half of the map.
And remember, too, they are rotating down to control the bot shrine specifically because it's the closest to boss. This is why Soul Torturers has to respect that. You could see the movement there around the mid lane. They're coming down. They have to check. They have to see, is L5 trying to take this away from us, sneak it away? Dahaka's the global. He can come down, but he has to stay there for now. And as you can see, SDE rotates in now. They want to try to grab double here with the boss pressure alone.
Power slide going in there. Another cleanse used for Sway. That one not nearly as clean as some of the other ones through this game. Might be a cooldown that he regrets not having over the next minute here or so, but it's up to Soul Torture to be able to force that hand. And with the shots complete, it's unlikely that's going to happen unless that boss you've been talking about gets started, Wolf.
Yeah, and Jungha did pressure the bot lane. Again, this forces the rotation down from Soul Torturers. It's not incredible pressure. It's not immediate pressure, but this is the pressure that they need to respond to. Cleanse still on cooldown here. It's a risky proposition for L5 to start this, but look at what's happening. Again, SC is prepping the top wave. They're just out-rotating Soul Torturers, showing the boss to force a big 4-man rotation, then always having another member to have that lane pressure. And this pressure that we see from SC is much more significant than the Illidan pressure we saw bot lane earlier, because this pressure is headed directly to the core.
The members of Soul Torturers gathering, not comfortable walking away from that boss, and understandably so. If L5 manages to pick that up, it's not game by any means, but with the dive-heavy composition they have, all it's going to take is 1 to 2 kills, a beautiful cocoon here or there, and they will find themselves a GG. It's not a siege composition. It's a, we're just going to go ahead and dive past this keep. All right, we'll eliminate everybody onto your side, and the boss, it'll just take a couple shots.
Yeah, and the boss will almost guarantee them 20 first. Right now, it's still pretty competitive with the extra comeback mechanics we talked about, with the extra forts that Soul Torturers got later. They've kept the EXP pretty even. They have the global of Dahaka always matching those waves. Hooligan in a very aggressive spot here. Gets stunned here. Where's the cleanse? There's nobody nearby. He's may get picked. Just barely gets over the wall there. Close call. Even SDE's trying to get rid of that, that footman there to make sure he doesn't get the pick. Very close call. Hooligan being the human ward there, but nearly gets taken out. Close call, but does get the information and does survive.
And we see, Swoy sticking around with him, making sure he gets the HP up, and being down in HP for a while. They're just going to make sure the boss is not captured. Tassadar throwing out the Oracle. And we find once again L5 conveniently has a night camp with a winning trade into the top lane as an objective spawning. It's almost as if they've done this a couple of times.
They've planned this before. I mean, whether it's Swoy on the Brightwing in the top lane, or if it's in modern day meta, the Illidan in the top lane with Hunt, you've got the global up in the top lane. You have that direct pressure. They're so good at this macro-oriented play on Sky Temple, and they're just trying to bleed Soul Torturers out of the game with this pressure. And now that level 20 is up and the Hunt is even more global than before, more powerful than before, Soul Torturers have to try to take a fight here. Otherwise, it feels like they're just eventually going to get grinded out of the game here, Dread.
One huge thing is that Archon is going to be permanent Archon now. So we have seen that in the past, they've walked away when Archon comes out. Cucumber is going to be able to, get a lot of auto attacks off constantly onto, as long as this doesn't get killed too fast, he will be able to restore that. SC is out of position too. The 1v1 between Dahaka and the Illidan is real. Zhang Ha's going for backdoor too
at the same time. Yeah, he's got that backdoor. Something you always have to be afraid of in late game with the Illidan when you've got catapults on the core. And now, Soul Torturers may want to consider starting to Hearth home here if they can't lock him down. Looks like he's going to Hunt bot, as it may have been some damage given there by Dahaka on the defense. But the Illidan is now pushing in the bot lane with that Siege Giant camp. This was all planned from the beginning. When the camp was taken, he knew that was going to be his escape path. So now you've got bot and top pressure to deal with here. Still, Soul Torturers with that Twilight Archon managed to take that temple. It's pretty incredible, all things considered.
I hate to break it to you, but L5's panicking. They just had a huge upper hand, and they didn't make anything happen. Zhang Ha maybe caught out. Swoy's there with the Ancestral. Keep in mind, ETC has not picked up his 20. That could be a death medal, a tour bus, who knows, because ETC's 20s are ridiculous. And if they end up abusing this chaos that it seems like L5 is kind of enforcing right now, it very much could be Soul Torture's game to lose.
L5 just wants to take any damage to the core is damage to the core, whether it's objective or no. They want to use Zhang on steady. Hunt's top is starting to pressure that. Now he's going to force the rest of Soul Torturers back, and if he can get away here, he's got 25 seconds left on the Hunt. If he gets away, they get the keep. Worst case scenario, if Soul Torturers don't come back, he gets potentially the kill here. We do see Cucumber's very, very low, wants to maintain that Twilight Archon. There's the pick on the Jungle, but again, they get the keep from this, so it feels like it's all okay.
Scroll has got the bolt there on for his ETC. They're going to try and move forward and without anybody mounted up very effectively. Actually, double of 5 coming in.
Yeah, very scary moment here for L5, but it doesn't look like he's able to get the grabs.
I want boss. If I'm Soul Torturers, you're down all the structures. You have to take the boss here, but we have repulsion at 20. Li Ming is such a huge boss tool, and now there's no death metal. SC is a monster. Zola with the detainment strike. Hooligan
Do they have
hitting the
enough damage,
3-man
though?
knock-up.
Li Ming is stunned here, can't get the resets, can't get the dominance to heal up. Rhaegar nowhere nearby. Hooligan looking for the save, though. Scroll's caught in between a Li Ming and a boss.
He gets hit by the boss. Zola, luckily, he's there to be able to get the heals. And now structurally, we find Soul Torturers only head by a fraction, but the core damage is going to be real. 20 seconds before these altars are going to be up. And Soul Torturers...
Look at Sway on the minimap. He's looking to backdoor the core with those catapult minions. This forces Dahaka back. Looks like they will get the cap here. Hooligan not willing to mess with this. Li Ming's not nearby. But what a close call for ST.
Yeah, but it is by no means easy breathing here for L5. They've got that boss stomping away onto the bottom half of the map. There's a double shrine here through top. So let's see what Soul Torturers decide to do. Because keep in mind, if all these shots go over to one team, either team, it very easily could be game. And if Illidan gets vision over a minion, he could hunt onto the core and force Soul Torturers to back.
Yeah, okay, the minions do spawn here. Will that be his option? We're going to see what he wants to do. Looks like he's going to fight 005 to deny this for now. Okay, here it comes. He goes for the hunt aggressively here, but the Aegis comes out.
Cleanse is going to be used, but I don't think it's going to matter. Swoy's in a bad spot. There is the power side and the mosh pit.
Ancestral does not go off. Hooligan with the huge stuns coming in. Swoy looks for the pick here.
1 for 1.
ST needs the resets.
Needs the reset if they're going to be successful. SC gets the very first. Cocoon is going to be the reveal. Goddog trying to skirt his way on out here, but L5 is 1 man up, 2 men up, and this is going to be it. L5, after what was a very close game, suddenly gains control once again.
Oh, if I had to pick an MVP for this series, it would absolutely be Hooligan. We saw great plays out of SC on the Genji. We saw really nice rotations out of Jungha on the Illidan. We saw the hunt coming in so many times, several different rotations here for L5 on the map they're so known for. But when the DPSs were down, when SC was picked off first, when Jungha was picked off first, it was Hooligan who got those consistent stuns that allowed the Li Ming to carry when SDE was able to get those resets. And this is going to be, as you said, Dread, game over here as the core starts to tick down. The final shots will nearly do it.
It's not going to be enough, though. The members of L5 do have to stomp their way on over to this half of the map. Is prepping it down to the 52. ETC, again, he has no mosh pit. That is the only chance he would have to possibly stall out this game any longer. The Ancestral really is just going to be add salt to the wound. And this is now L5 taking a 2-0 over Soul Torturers.
What incredible team fighting we saw there at the end to win it. Jay-How, your thoughts? I know you were watching this series. I know you had a lot of fun, as we did. What are you thinking?
I think you guys, I was sitting here watching it beside you, and I'm over here moving in my seat. I didn't expect Soul Torturers to put up that much of a fight, but credit to them for staying in it. I got to just echo what Dread said. L5 got to a point to where it's like their engine stalled. They're like, guys, I don't remember where the gas pedal is. I'm not sure where we're supposed to go here. And 20 was picked up by Soul Torturers, and L5 didn't have an answer.
Yeah, it felt like in that moment they forgot that Dahaka was on the other side, and Jungha was like, well, I'm just going to win this with Illidan backdoor pressure, and they didn't deal with the temple itself, the objective itself. They just kind of let that go, which caused them to lose a keep almost 2. The top keep had like 2% health left up there, so really close call, but as you can see, good sportsmanship coming between these two teams. Is a very close second game there. But yeah, I have to agree there was this moment where it looked like Soul Torturers was about to break the almost mirror of L5 is to just go through to the other side. There was this barrier that was nearly broken there as L5 couldn't quite end the game.
Yeah, and that is not a one-time deal for L5. If you watch them play, specifically against MVP Black, it feels way more common there when they're playing against that if they respect their opponents more. But this is something we have to be keeping an eye on through the rest of this tournament if you are an L5 fan, because maybe a better team, if you have that stall, in fact, will be able to win the game. But Jay-How, we've got that last fight.
The last fight here, you know, Jungha took a very aggressive approach multiple times, and, you know, the Ancestral obviously being just a little bit short. We'll see here in just a minute. The cleanse was there, and you got to think Swoy, because of the stun, because of the power slide, didn't allow Swoy to get that Ancestral off in time, and that's when things look crazy. But SDE actually landed a beautiful magic missile combo onto Zola, and I think at that point, without the Ariel there, made it a much tougher fight, and at that point, L5 took it over.
It's kind of funny funny too, because with what Hooligan was able to accomplish there, you would have thought if he had missed the stun, maybe he would have needed the Ancestral. Could have been a funny thing where the Ancestral, because it didn't get used, ended up being a boon for them, could have healed him, but it was just carried there, as you say, by the Li Ming, by SDE, and we're just going to watch the end of this one, I suppose, as Cucumber tries to make something
Battle
happen.
of the Sprays right there.
Yeah.
Look, we've got one, and we're champs, and that's a nice heroes when you got there.
Gotta love it. Anytime a team can throw down the spray, I absolutely adore it. But either way, we're not gonna keep you guys waiting. We want to hear from Trixler and L5 about their thoughts on that series. You know,
Soon, anyways, yeah, right?
Last time I spoke
Thank you,
when we
Dread.
threw,
I'm here with
and it
John Watt
immediately
here
went.
from
And I was going to hold
L5.
off on this
And
one,
let's just
but
go
don't
ahead and
worry,
ask
we're
you.
getting
There
it.
seems to be
We're
a curse
getting it.
going on with Korean teams taking on another region, the game number 2. What happened in your game 2?
사실 한국 지역이 사실 이렇게 다른 동남아나 대만을 상대로 이렇게 힘든 경기를 펼칠지 몰랐는데 그래서 이제 두 번째 게임에서는 어떻게 느끼셨고 어떻게 플레이하셨는지 궁금합니다.
사실 두 번째 경기에 중반까지는 진다고 생각을 안 했는데 하면서 성체가 저희도 많이 밀렸더라고요. 그때부터 조금 걱정됐고 한타를 한번 실수해서 졌어요. 네. 그래도 약간 질 것 같진 않았어요. 네.
In their early game and the middle game, they still have a competence and they don't think they lose the game. But after some, they lose team fight and their keep is going away. Then they have threatened by the Total Torturers, but they still have incompetence.
Awesome. Seems like the Haka was a bit of a pain. Let's go ahead and talk about your roster. Obviously, you got 2 new members on your team. In particular, Hooligan seems to be outstanding. What do you think about your roster right now?
지금 새로운 로스터로 게임에 임하고 있는데요. 지금까지는 꽤 성공적인 걸로 보이는데 지금 로스터에 대해 어떻게 생각하시나요?
저희 로스트는 충분히 만족 중이고 지금보다 솔직히 한번 우승 같은 것을 맛보면은 충분히 1등할 수 있는 팀이 될 것 같아요.
For the new roster, I'm really happy about the new members. And if we win this tournament or other tournaments, that will be a great experience and we might get a major tournament.
Awesome. Well, the roster continues to improve, and we will see more of L5 tomorrow. But up next, it's time for someone to go home and time for someone to stay. We'll be having the Dirty Kick and taking on CE up next.